Once upon a time, in the beautiful city of Lagos, lived a woman named Nkem. Nkem was the kind of woman whose heart had carried more pain than most people could ever imagine. For 8 long years, she and her husband Ibuka had prayed for a child. Doctors, prophets, specialists, there was no place that Nkem and her husband did not visit. Some said she was cursed, others said her womb was closed, but Nkem held on to hope like a lifeline. One day, after many failed attempts, her doctor suggested that she considers IVF. Nkem clung to the news with trembling joy, as though heaven had finally remembered her name. Weeks passed, and her tests began. Injections became her daily routine, and finally she was pregnant. Congratulations, the doctor said, as he revealed to her that she was pregnant. Nkem fell to her knees in disbelief. She sobbed uncontrollably as Ibuka held her in his arms. Her dream, her long-awaited miracle, had finally come, and Nkem could not believe her eyes. Throughout her pregnancy, she sang to her unborn child. She rubbed her belly lovingly, whispering prayers over the life growing within her. Her joy radiated so brightly that even the neighbors felt it. But something else changed too. Nkem, who had been bitter and short-tempered for years because of the pain of barrenness, suddenly became a brand new woman. She became gentle, kind, deliberate, soft. The yelling stopped, the anger vanished, the resentment dissolved. Her husband noticed the transformation. For the first time in years, their home felt warm again. They cooked together, prayed together, laughed together, and Nkem smiled like a woman again. It was as though the pregnancy had given her back a part of her soul that was lost. Months later, Nkem delivered a beautiful baby girl. Her joy knew no bounds. She held her baby close, kissing her forehead, unable to stop her tears. "Thank you, Jesus," she cried repeatedly, as she could not believe that she had finally become a mother. Her husband tried to call a few people, but Nkem pleaded with him to wait. "Ebuka, please don't tell anyone yet," she warned softly. "Let us get home first and even settle down. Not everyone needs to hear it now." But Ebuka's joy overflowed. He told friends, cousins, neighbors, and even longtime friends. Ibuka did not see it as a big deal. He was simply excited and wanted others to share in his joy. Little did he know that this decision would end up ruining his life in the most painful way. Days later, Nkem and her husband were discharged from the hospital. They placed their newborn baby in the car seat as they began their journey back home. A few minutes later, they approached the express, and a reckless driver who was racing another car lost control and rammed into their car. A deafening crash was heard as glass shattered everywhere. Hours later, Nkem woke up in the hospital, her head spinning as her entire body ached. Nkem looked around frantically as she began to ask for her baby. "Where's my baby?" she said repeatedly as a nurse stepped forward, her face drenched in sorrow. "Madam, I'm sorry. Your baby did not survive." Nkem's world stopped. She screamed until her lungs burned. She wailed until her voice vanished. Her soul felt like it had been ripped out of her body. Ibuka lay on a bed nearby, injured but conscious, with tears streaming down his face. For weeks, Nkem refused food. She locked herself in the nursery, holding the tiny clothes of the child that she never truly got to know. Then one afternoon, her phone rang. It was her auntie from the village. "Nkem, my daughter," the woman said joyfully. "How is your baby now? Your husband called us. He told the whole family. We thank God for your safe delivery." Nkem froze. Her chest tightened. Her eyes burned with rage. "So he told them. He told everyone. Even after I begged him not to? This is your fault," she screamed at Ibuka, whose heart broke to see his wife accuse him of being responsible for their daughter's death. "Ibuka, I begged you not to tell anyone yet, or you opened your mouth and shouted it for the world to hear. Now, our daughter is gone. You caused it, Ibuka. You killed our daughter," she said angrily as Ibuka tried to explain. He tried to defend himself, to apologize, but Nkem shut him out. She stopped speaking to him, stopped sitting with him, stopped sleeping next to him, and even stopped praying with him. Their once peaceful home turned into a battlefield of silence. Nights ended in fights. Days ended in tears. Every word became an argument. Every minute was soaked in resentment as their marriage stood on the edge of a collapse. Ibuka tried everything within his power to restore peace in their home. He cooked for her, cleaned the house, begged on his knees repeatedly. He bought her flowers, wrote her long messages, knelt by her bedside at night, whispering, "Nkem, please don't let grief destroy us." But Nkem's heart had turned into stone. Her pain spoke louder than Ibuka's voice. Her anger swallowed whatever love remained, and no matter what he did, she refused to soften. One morning, Ibuka invited their pastor, hoping that maybe, just maybe, a spiritual voice could heal their marriage. The pastor arrived their home, his Bible tucked underneath his arm. "My daughter," he said softly, "grief can blind the heart. Your husband is hurting too. Forgiveness does not erase the pain, but it frees the soul." But Nkem refused to look at him. "Pastor," she whispered coldly, "please don't beg me. I will never forgive him, never." The pastor's heart broke. He prayed for them quietly and left, hoping that time would heal their wounds. But time only made things worse. Ibuka then invited Nkem's mother from the village. When Mama stepped into the house and saw her daughter's face, she burst into tears. "Nkem, my child, what is this I'm hearing? That you no longer speak to your husband? That your home has become a battlefield?" Nkem looked away as her mother cried out and reached to her. "Nkem, don't do this. Marriage is hard, but this man loves you. Both of you lost a child. Both of you are grieving. Don't make the devil rejoice over your pain." But Nkem stood to her feet slowly and said, "Mama, for as long as I live, I will never forgive this man. He killed my baby. He killed my joy. Even if God himself comes down to beg me, I will not forgive him." Ibuka stood in a corner weeping, as though his heart had been shattered like glass. Mama cried and tried to hold her daughter, but Nkem walked away. Her mind was locked, her heart closed, her marriage hanging by a single dying thread. Days turned into weeks. Weeks rolled into months, and still there was no smile on their faces, no peace, no warmth in a place that they once called home. The house that once echoed with laughter became a graveyard of emotions. Then, one quiet evening, the unexpected happened. Nkem heard a knock on her door. At first, she tried to ignore it, but the knock persisted. Nkem dragged herself to the door, expecting a neighbor or worse still, a delivery man. But what she saw at the door shocked her to her bones. Her breath caught in her throat as she looked in front of her. Standing there was a man and a woman who she had never seen before. The woman carried a baby in her arms, a beautiful baby girl that she wished was her own. "Good evening," the man said politely. "We are so sorry to disturb you. My name is Mr. Adeyemi, and this is my wife, Tola." Nkem stared at them confused. "Can we please come in?" the woman whispered nervously, as Nkem hesitated but finally stepped aside. The couple entered, their faces filled with anxiety and something deeper. Fear. "Where is your husband?" Mr. Adeyemi asked gently. "We need to speak to both of you." Ibuka came out of the bedroom, confused and cautious, as they all sat in the living room. Silence swallowed the room as the Adeyemis exchanged a look before the husband finally began to speak. "We received a call from the hospital yesterday. Nkem's heart skipped, and they told us there was a mistake during the IVF procedure." Nkem's eyes widened instantly. Ibuka froze like statue. "What mistake?" Nkem whispered. Mr. Adeyemi took a deep breath. "The embryo used for your IVF, it was not yours. There was a serious labeling error at the fertility center. Your embryo was accidentally implanted into my wife, and our embryo was implanted into yours." Nkem felt her chest tighten. "You carried our baby," the man continued, voice shaking. "For 9 months. She's our biological child." The room fell silent. The air grew thin. Nkem's hands trembled as she stared at the baby in his wife's arms. The child, the beautiful little girl. She had Nkem's eyes, her nose, her smile. "My God," Nkem whispered breathlessly. "Is this my baby?" Tola nodded slowly, tears gathering in her eyes. "Yes, this is your child." Nkem burst into uncontrollable tears. She reached out instinctively, but stopped halfway, her hands trembling too violently to move. Tola held the baby closer. "We came to swap babies," she said painfully. so everyone can take their rightful child. Nkem's heart raced. So, where's our baby? She asked softly, her voice cracking as silence filled the entire room. Mr. Adeyemi lowered his head as he began to speak, clueless that the baby they came for was dead. We were hoping to meet the baby you birthed, he whispered. Can you bring her to us? He said as Ibuka shut his eyes tight. Nkem broke down instantly as the truth hung in the air like a knife. The child is dead, Nkem said to Tola and her husband, who screamed out in pain as Nkem narrated how the baby died in the accident. Tola screamed. Her legs collapsed beneath her as she began to wail uncontrollably. No! No! She wailed, slamming her fist on the floor as her voice tore through the house like a wounded animal. My baby cannot be gone! My baby cannot be gone, she said as she cried. No amount of comfort could reach her. No amount of words could pacify her. Grief swallowed her like a flood. My baby! My baby! Mr. Adeyemi cried beside her, shaking uncontrollably. Ibuka held his head in both hands, sobbing as though life had beaten him bare. Nkem stood there trembling, guilt crushing her chest like a boulder. She had blamed Ibuka for months, but the truth was bigger than both of them. This pain was a circle of tragedies, one no human could have controlled. The Adeyemis wept for the baby they lost. Nkem wept for the child she never carried. It was a sight Nkem would never forget, a sight that broke her heart in ways that she did not expect. But then, something happened that none of them anticipated. Tola looked up, her eyes swollen, her face drenched in tears, as she stared at Nkem with an expression that carried pain and accusation. You carried my baby, she said shakily. You held her, you fed her, and now she's gone. Nkem's lips quivered as Tola slowly rose to her feet, still shaking. Nkem could feel the pain in her voice as tears began to blur her vision. She watched as Tola informed them that she had to leave with the baby since her own child was no more. I will not leave this house without my baby. I carried her for 9 months. I risked my life for her. I gave birth to her. I almost died on the operating table because of her. Even if she's not mine, I carried her for 9 months, and that should count for something. Her voice cracked with bitterness as she declared that the child was hers. She's my child. Do you hear me? My child. Nkem suddenly stood up, her entire body trembling. Tola, that child is my blood, and I won't let you live with her, she screamed. My DNA, my flesh, my own miracle. That baby belongs to me. The air thickened with tension as their husbands stood back and watched. Tola took a step backwards as though Nkem's voice had physically struck her. She held the baby tightly as Nkem took a step forward, her eyes blazing as tears began to pour out of her eyes. I will never let you live with her. Never. A terrifying silence filled the room as Tola staggered backwards, shocked beyond words. Her husband froze, unable to breathe. You what? Tola whispered. I won't let you take her. Nkem repeated sharply. She's mine. I have suffered enough in this life. I have buried one child. I will not lose another. Tola's mouth fell open as she began to regret her decision to visit their home that evening. She turned to her husband, her voice shaking. We should never have come here, she cried. What kind of woman lets our child to die and still wants to take the child that I carried in my womb for 9 months, a child that she never even knew was hers until now? You can't bury my child as yours and still want to keep my living child. Her voice cracked, sharp and drenched in unbearable pain. Nkem's chest rose and fell rapidly. Tola listened. Ibuka tried to speak, but Nkem raised her hand sharply. No, Ibuka, let me speak. Her voice was low, controlled but burning like fire. She turned to Tola with eyes red from pain and months of grief. You don't understand what emptiness feels like, Nkem whispered. You don't know what it means to bury a child that you prayed for, cried for and begged God for. You don't know what it means to hold your baby and watch her slip away. Tola gasped sharply. I don't know, she screamed. I just found out that my baby, my blood, my miracle is dead because of an accident I didn't even know happened. Her knees buckled again. I didn't even get to hold her, she cried. I didn't get to kiss her. I didn't get to see her face. I didn't get to say goodbye. Her husband held her shoulders as she trembled uncontrollably. Nkem's tears flowed freely now. I'm sorry, truly, but that baby, she pointed at the child in Tola's arms. That baby is all I have left. The only thing that gives me a reason to breathe. I will not let her go. Tola stared at her in disbelief. So what do you expect us to do? She whispered painfully. Just walk away? Pretend we never had the child? Pretend your accident did not kill our baby? Nkem closed her eyes tightly, as though the truth was stabbing her from inside. I cannot lose again, she whispered. I would rather die. Tola's eyes widened. You want to survive at my expense? You want to heal why I bleed? Is that your idea of justice? Nkem said nothing. Her silence was her answer. Mr. Adeyemi stepped forward slowly. Enough is enough, he said, his voice shaking but firm. If you really want this child, you will have to fight us in court, he said as he revealed that the child's birth certificate as it stands now clearly shows that Tola and himself are the legal parents of their daughter Bidemi. So Nkem had no right to the child, he said as he walked out of the house angrily with his wife Tola. Nkem stood there frozen. She watched in terror as Tola walked out of her house with her child, a child she never knew existed until now. Her legs trembled beneath her as her breath came in fragments, like someone who was struggling to stay alive. Nkem tried to scream, but no sound came out. The door closed, and with that single sound, her heart shattered into a million pieces. She decided to go to court to fight for her own daughter, who was now in the arms of another woman. Nkem contacted a lawyer who informed her that she had a very high chance of gaining custody of the child. As long as the DNA test confirms that you're the baby's mother, the court will rule in your favor, he said confidently. For the first time in months, a small spark of hope flickered in Nkem's heart. The day of the hearing finally arrived, and Nkem caught sight of her baby, carefully tucked away in Tola's arms. Nkem stood on one side, her eyes swollen from crying, her hands shaking, her soul trembling. Tola stood on the other side with her husband, clutching the baby tightly like her life depended on it. It was a scene that broke even the judge. After weeks of testimonies, arguments, medical records, and heated exchanges, the judge finally ordered that a DNA test be conducted. Nkem could not contain her excitement. She remembered what her lawyer said and knew that the judge would finally award her custody. Days later, the DNA test arrived and the judge read the result for all to hear. The DNA confirms that Nkem is the biological mother of the child. Nkem could not contain her excitement, even if it came with tears. Her cries ripped through the courtroom as she beat her chest and thanked God for coming through for her. Tola, on the other hand, cried out in agony as she collapsed into her husband's arms. She could not believe that a child that she carried for 9 months was going to be given to another woman, even when her real biological child died in a car accident. The judge revealed that as long as the biological mother of the child was fit to care for the child, the law cannot deny her custody of the child. But as Nkem began to cry tears of joy, the judge cleared his throat and continued to speak. However, there is one more detail in the DNA report that must be addressed. The courtroom fell silent as the judge revealed that Ibuka, Nkem's husband, was not the father of the child. The entire room exploded as everyone opened their eyes and mouths in shock. Ibuka staggered backwards as if someone had punched him hard across the chest. His eyes widened in confusion as he looked at Nkem, who was even more confused than he was. The entire courtroom froze as everyone looked at each other confused. Tola's head snapped up violently as Ibuka staggered backwards, like one being struck by lightning. Nkem's mouth fell open, her eyes widened in confusion. Mr. Adeyemi could not contain his shock. Tola turned slowly to her husband, her eyes shaking with disbelief. "Bidemi is yours?" she whispered as her husband looked at her shocked. "Tola, I swear, I don't understand what is happening. I don't know how this is possible." Nkem sat there trembling as she tried to understand what was happening. She could not understand how Mr. Adeyemi was the father of her child. "The embryo was supposed to be from my eggs and my husband's sperm," she said to the judge, who revealed to her that the fertility center had come out to admit to 2 separate errors. First, they mixed up the embryos, and then they went on to fertilize the eggs with the wrong sperm. The fertility clinic revealed that the doctor in charge acted with negligence by not labeling the samples properly. He received a call informing him that his mother had died. So, overwhelmed with grief, He made the mistake that led to what had happened. At those words, the entire courtroom broke into murmurs. Even the stenographer's hand stopped typing. The judge lifted his gavel and struck it gently, calling the room back to order. He leaned forward, his voice firm with compassion. With all that has been happening, with all the tragedy, confusion, and emotion surrounding this case, the judge began. There is one thing this court cannot ignore: the welfare of this child. Everyone held their breath. This little girl did not ask for any of this. He continued. She did not ask to be conceived in a clinic where mistakes were made. She did not ask to be carried by one woman, fathered by another, and raised in the storm of grief. She deserves stability, love, and peace, and this court will protect that. Nkem clutched her chest. Tola wiped her tears. Mr. Adeyemi squeezed his wife's hands, trembling. The judge sighed deeply and delivered his ruling. This court hereby grants joint custody to Mrs. Nkem Obianuju and Mr. Adeyemi. A gasp echoed in the hall. Nkem, the judge continued gently, you shall have primary physical custody. The child will live with you. Nkem burst into fresh tears, her knees almost giving way. However, the judge added firmly, Mr. Adeyemi, you will have visitation rights, regular contact, and the legal recognition of fatherhood. Both of you will co-parent this child. Both of you will be in her life, and both of you will raise her with love, not anger, not bitterness or blame. Tola's lips parted, but this time, not in anger, in relief. The judge wasn't done. As for the fertility center, this court will open a separate case for gross negligence, but this is not today's fight. He struck his gavel as the court rose and watched him leave from the back. The entire courtroom was now filled with murmurs as Nkem walked out, her daughter clutched to her chest as tears streamed down her face, not of pain this time, but of gratitude. She turned to see Tola standing alone in a corner, crying softly. Their eyes met, and for a moment there was complete silence. Then something unexpected happened. Nkem walked towards her and apologized for all that had happened. Tola did not move. She didn't breathe. She simply stood there, broken and exhausted, as she bursted into tears. I'm sorry too, she cried. I was angry, hurting, confused. I didn't mean to fight you. I just wanted to hold my baby. I know, Nkem said, wiping her tears. And you will. You will always be a part of her life. She will have two mothers. She will grow up surrounded by love, not pain. Tola nodded, her shoulders shaking. Mr. Adeyemi joined them, wiping his tears. Something changed in that moment. Pain transformed into peace. Grief transformed into healing. Enemies transformed into family. Over the next months, a strange miracle happened. The Adeyemis visited often. Sometimes they brought diapers. Sometimes toys, food. Other times they simply came to hold the child that God had mysteriously woven into all their lives. Tola and Nkem grew close, closer than anyone expected. They bonded over motherhood, loss, healing, and compassion. The child grew up surrounded by four parents who adored her, protected her, and raised her in unity. She had a mother who birthed her, a father who loved her fiercely, a second mother who carried her in her womb, and a second father who adored everything about her. And strangely, she became the thread that stitched two broken families back into wholeness. And though her beginning was mixed with tragedy, her future became a testimony of healing, a testimony of unity, a testimony of love. They all learned to love the child that God had brought into their lives, and together they raised her, not as my child or your child, but as our child. And that became the greatest miracle of all. The lesson to be learned from this story is that life does not always unfold the way we plan, but even in the middle of heartbreak, confusion, and unimaginable pain, grace can still find a way to shine through. Forgiveness is not weakness, it is healing. Sometimes, the people we think are our enemies are simply victims of their own grief, and when love leads instead of anger, wounds begin to close. This story teaches that motherhood is deeper than biology, deeper than pregnancy, and deeper than DNA. Through families built through compassion, sacrifice, and unity, and above all, God can use even the most painful tragedies to create unexpected blessings, turning broken pieces into a new beginning, filled with peace, love, and hope